All right, everybody, welcome back to Hot Route Takes. This is Week 7 NFL preview episode. The NFL year is flying by, man. A lot of good football been played so far. We're past the quarter mark of the NFL season, and we've got to bring some coverage to a lot of good teams. And each of our team is in a headlining matchup, I think, this week. But to do as we usually do on these preview shows, we're going to go back and recap the two primetime games we didn't get a chance to do in our last episode. Two headlining ones. One is an AFC East team that was the Bills squeaking out a narrow win over the Tyrod Taylor led New York Giants. So I'll let Brian spill his thoughts on that game and what he saw from the Bills.
Yeah, I thought the Bills really played some real sloppy football. I guess they overestimate or underestimated the Giants, and really should have lost this football game from my account. I think they kind of got bailed out by the refs in a couple instances, especially some questionable no calls regarding the pass interference on the goal line. The Giants had two opportunities within the five, probably within the 2 yard line, before half and at the end of the game to win this football game, and still have yet to score their first touchdown of the season on offense. So, train wreck for the Giants, but they still almost won this football game. So, Giants fans out there probably feel pretty good about what happened in this football game, probably feel pretty optimistic, but man, this is just one of those games for Buffalo. It's like, what happened here? They just didn't show up. And they have all the talent in the world. We know that. We know they're a very good football team, and they can compete with any team in the NFL. But to play down to a lowly team like the Giants is just kind of embarrassing, especially when they didn't have their starting quarterback. But credit to the Giants. They played a tough game and really played this through the end. And good for them. Tyrod Taylor made a critical mistake right before half where he audible to a run call and gave it to Barkley, and that ran the clock out and stopped them from scoring. So the game was very much in their grasp. But I guess the big takeaway from this football game is the Buffalo Bills are 100% vulnerable at times and can be taken advantage of. But at the other side, we all know how good they are. So just walking a tightrope right now with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, they kind of matched the theme of NFL Week 6. We saw the 49ers go down at home. We saw the Eagles drop a game to the New York Jets. So no team is unbeatable right now, and every team in the NFL has a loss. So the Bills playing down to the Giants on prime time, while it be head scratching, at least they can say they got the win.
Yeah.
We'll move it on to the Monday night game that featured Christians Chargers in a great, evenly matched back and forth Monday night football game, between the Chargers and Dallas Cowboys. Dallas ultimately coming out on top. Christian, I know it's a hard one to swallow, especially into the game. You want to see your guys come out on top in a close contest like that, but we knew these teams were pretty evenly matched. What were the deciding factors that ended up skewing the game towards the Cowboys to come out victorious?
Me, big thing, kind of both teams did pretty well was stop the run. I mean, both teams couldn't get anything going. I think ultimately that really hurt the Chargers. That's been, Kellen Moore's biggest thing he's pushed this year is being balance, and it just couldn't happen this game. I mean, the same things for the Cowboys. I mean, personally, the game was kind of a snooze fest. I mean, it really was just a very defensive, slow game. But I mean, Herbert did kind of, what he kind of been doing all season, but just really it's the Keenan Allen show, and that's really all we're getting. I mean, Josh Palmer did have a good game, 4 catches for 60, but I think really the Chargers are going to have to be the Keenan Allen has to carry the show, kind of like what we see with the team we just talked about in Buffalo, what Stephon Diggs gets done to him. Until Eckler's really 100%, I think that's really going to be the Chargers, how we're going to have to win games moving forward. It's just Keenan Allen. I will say the pass rush has gotten better from the beginning to now. That was kind of our last little thing we talked about. My take last week was, or last episode was, will this kind of be where the defense kind of gets right? And I think we really did a good job other than the CeeDee Lamb. But, I mean, that's kind of been our problem with stopping number one wide receivers. And that's just some of the takeaways I've seen just during this game, too.
Yep. A good game, one that sucks for your guys to come out on the short end of, but a real bounce back type matchup and flagship game, divisional game for you guys this week. So hopefully they'll turn it around against the Chiefs. So with that, we're going to segue right into the NFL Week 7 preview picks. Our first Thursday night game features the Jacksonville Jaguars going on the road, prime time to New Orleans in the Superdome with Bourbon Street. Trevor Lawrence is listed as questionable. We didn't mention his injury last game. So that obviously a key factor into who you may pick in this game. I would bet on him playing if I had. I mean, I have no inside information here, obviously, but I would just lean towards him playing. That said, for some reason I'm going to pick an upset here. I'm going with the Saints. I think Jacksonville's obviously the better team. I think they're better offensively and defensively, but a home primetime game in New Orleans is always a great atmosphere. I think Derek Carr could play some good football. Defense is playing pretty well all year, and then even if Trevor does play, he may be banged up. So I'm going to pick the upset here and go with the Saints.
I'm going to go with Jacksonville, and it's just because I believe in that run game, and I still have yet to see the Saints offense really impress me too much, so I'm going to go with Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jacksonville, really just off of what Brian said. With Travis Etienne and what he's doing with that workload they're giving him now, he's just looking more and more impressive each week. So I'm betting on anybody without Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be on Travis Etienne in that run game.
Yeah. I agree all the way. Jacksonville's a better team. I'm just trying to find an upset somewhere in the week, so I kind of landed on this first one. We'll move it to the sunny slate of games. It kicks off with an AFC West foe, the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 3-3, traveling to Chicago 1-5. I'll let Christian lead us off and who you got, and touch on the Raiders a little bit.
Yeah, both teams. This is the battle of the backup quarterbacks here in this game. I mean, that's really what it's going to be. Jimmy G's not healthy. I think that's the Raiders' biggest concern, but I will say their defense is looking better and better each week. But I just think this is another week that Davante Adams is now, getting more healthy. I think really he's been a decoy. So I think this would be maybe Davante Adams' game lookout. I think definitely against a not so good Chicago team. And honestly, I think the Raiders, even with a backup quarterback, this could honestly be a Josh Jacobs game. No, my bad. I'm going Raiders.
Go ahead, bro.
I'm gonna go with the Raiders here as well. Justin Fields isn't playing this football game. He's one of the lone bright spots that I think Chicago has on offense. And I pity the second string quarterback has to come in behind the offensive line, facing against Max Crosby. So I'm gonna go with the Raiders.
Like it. I like it. I'll make it 3 for 3, and I'm taking the Raiders on the road as well to have a winning record through 7 weeks, which would be a major surprise. But I think that speaks to more their schedule more than anything. I don't think they're a good football team. But 3 for 3 on the Raiders. We'll move it on. I've got the AFC North 3-2 Cleveland Browns traveling to the 3-3 Indianapolis Colts. The Browns coming off that big upset win of the 49ers at home, led by PJ Walker. Deshaun's still questionable, so his status for this game really would determine a lot for me. Some big news to touch on for the Colts. Unfortunately, Mr. Anthony Richardson will be having shoulder surgery, missing the entirety of his rookie year. Really disheartening to hear. I thought he was the one rookie quarterback that needed to learn on the job more than any. And the promise he showed these first few weeks he got to play was very encouraging for all Colts fans everywhere. And I wanted to see more of him. So it sucks to see him go down with this injury. Really disheartening. But Gardner Minshew is going to try to do his part and lead this ground game and do his part in the passing game to sneak the Colts into a playoff. Wild card hunt's going to be tough, but don't count this Colt team out. You've seen Christian bang the drum on them for a while now, and they're pretty talented. But that said, whether Deshaun plays or not, I am taking Cleveland. I think the defense is better, and I will bank on them making more plays to put the Colts in bad field position and get their offense a short field to work with to sneak across a touchdown or two and pull this game out.
Yeah, I'm going with Cleveland as well. The Colts are probably going to have a hard time moving the football against Cleveland, and especially since Gardner Minshew really did not look good last week. I think they're going to be one-dimensional and have to try to pound the rock against a really good Cleveland defense. Deshaun plays or Deshaun doesn't play, I'm still going to pick Cleveland.
After what I seen out of Gardner Minshew last week, just the Cleveland defense is on another level, and I think they kind of realize, kind of like what we seen out of the Jets last year, they know they have to play top tier to get a lot of these wins, definitely without Deshaun. So if anything, this game would be, I think, a battle in the trenches with the running backs, Kareem Hunt, run forward, and then maybe we see Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, a two-headed actual monster, go to last week, just wasn't existent.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with definitely Cleveland to win.
Yep. Colts can't afford to get behind games like they did last week to Jacksonville, so we'll see if that defensive slugfest that we think it will pan out. We're going to move it on to the AFC East matchup between the 4-2 Bills and the 1-5 Patriots. Brian, obviously 2 AFC East teams. I'll let you touch on what you think of both of these and who you have in this matchup.
So last week I picked the Bills over the Giants, and I thought they would blow them out here. And it's where my mind is with this game. I would expect the Bills to blow out New England, but you really never know, I guess. Any given Sunday, I guess, is the best phrase you can use here. But I'm definitely going to pick the Bills in this football game. I just think they have too much, and New England just doesn't have enough. And this might be a game where we get to see some Malik Cunningham, young quarterback out of Louisville, get some run in the offense. There's been rumblings, Mac Jones getting benched, they potentially moving on. I'm not sure how much of that has any legs to stand on, but New England is definitely in a rough spot here, and I don't think they have much of a chance to win this game. It's a divisional game. They just have looked so rough recently. I cannot imagine them winning this football game. So I'm going to go the Bills.
Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very easily Buffalo's game. I think Josh Allen, we've seen him play poorly, and then after that kind of bounce back. And I think this is same scenario. It's going to be a good bounce back game. Just still really more so because how New England's been playing, but just all their key players on defense is hurt for the season. So I think this is just going to be a big bounce back game for Buffalo, and Josh Allen just pat the stats in this game.
Agree with it there, guys. 3 for 3 on the Bills. I think this doesn't end up a close game at all, especially with the performance the Bills put in on Sunday Night Football. I think they'll be looking to sharpen some things out, especially on offense. And I would expect a big ground game from James Cook and company if I had to put anything anywhere in that matchup. So 3 for 3 on the Bills. We'll move it on. We've got an NFC East matchup. The 3-3 Washington Commanders traveling to the New York Giants, who are 1-5. Could still be without Daniel Jones in this one. Although they played the Bills tight, I just don't see any hope for Tyrod Taylor leading north of 20 points, truthfully, even at home, even against a Washington team that doesn't have the best defense. I'm going to take the Commanders to move to 4-3, and I'll just say that I think Scary Terry and company, Dotson and all those guys have a big day and put up north of 27-ish points, and Sam Howell moved the Commanders to 4-3, which would be a big victory for him, and certainly unexpected.
Yeah, this one was actually kind of tough for me, just because I'm not a believer in the Commanders and what they have going on, or Sam Howell. But the question for this game is Daniel Jones going to play or not? I think if he does play, the Giants probably lose this game. But because Tyrod Taylor's playing, I am going to pick the Giants in this game. I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley. And yeah, Saquon Barkley's healthy. Saquon Barkley is still one of the best backs in the NFL. And that's the identity of this team, and they had success last year. I can see them finding some success in this football game, especially building off of what they had going on last week. That seemed to work a little bit. Saquon had 93 yards rushing against a good defense. I'm going to pick the Giants in this game.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth too, and I mean, I kind of ultimately went with just the Commanders because one, their defense has been playing more impressive, and I just think Washington weapons in that wide receiver room against this Giants defense is not a good matchup to like what we've been hearing. It's just Jahan Dotson is going to get involved. Jahan Dotson's going to get involved. So I think this will be the week, like Chase said, that they will get him involved in the offense. But even with that, they have three, great wide receivers, I think, to go up against this cornerback room that the Giants have that hadn't been playing that great, but they're also some young players.
Yep. We'll move it on. We've got an NFC, a lot of divisional games this week now. I'm looking at NFC South matchup. The Falcons and Bucks both coming off losses. The Falcons at 3-3, Bucks at 3-2. I went back and forth on this one, but I landed on Atlanta. I just expect a bigger ground game from them right now and a little more balance. I trust Tampa's passing offense more, but I trust Atlanta's rushing offense more. Back and forth, but ultimately I'll take Atlanta to bounce back because they've been, even in their losses, they've been in all the games. So I just need more from Desmond Ridder. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, they're showing you they are good players when they're getting the targets. Just find a way to stay on schedule and get them the ball, and I think they'll come out victorious.
Yeah, I went with Atlanta too. I think as the season continues to go on, they'll kind of find the right rhythm, I guess, offensively, pass to run ratio, and just kind of find that sweet spot to get Bijan going on the ground and get your playmakers the ball in space. Kyle Pitts and Drake London, like you said, Chase, have been pretty good so far at the start of the year. You just imagine what this would look like with Tyler Heineke in the lineup. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Atlanta here.
We're not going to make this one a 3-for-3. I'm going Tampa Bay. I just think this defense is good enough to make Desmond Ridder look like the Desmond Ridder we have seen at some points this season. So I just see him maybe committing one or two too many turnovers. It's just this Tampa Bay defense. It's kind of what I think people didn't look too much into, I think, during the offseason when people kept putting them down. I just think this defense is going to make Atlanta not look that great, and I just don't think they're going to let the running backs for Atlanta have a field day on them. They're going to have to work for what they want to do against this Tampa Bay team. I just think maybe a bounce back from Baker just after what we seen last week out of him just was not a good performance.
Yep. And the team that we're covering next, I think, has a lot to attribute to that. That would be the Detroit Lions, who have been playing great, sound defensive football all year, and then complementary on the offensive side. A mouthwatering matchup, traveling to M&T Bank Stadium to take on my Ravens. Obviously, just last week on the preview pod, I touched on how much I love this Detroit team. I love pulling for them. I think they're well coached, and they have balance on offense and defense and multiple ways to beat you. I predicted them to, in a bold take, to make it all the way to NFC Championship. But that said, I believe a lot in my Ravens too. They're 4-2 on the year, and I think they are due for a really good home performance. They've yet to turn one in so far. Not a lot of home games, just 3. So I think they're due to turn one in right here. And I'm gonna take the Ravens at home. We're retiring Terrell Suggs into the Ring of Honor. Going to be an emotional day, a big matchup, obviously, with the 5-1 Lions coming in. And I think it's going to come all the way down to the wire. I've seen Justin Tucker boot the NFL record 66-yarder in Detroit to beat this team just a few years ago. And I think it come down something like that, a long Justin Tucker field goal to win this one late and hopefully move my Ravens to 5-2. So what do you guys got?
This one was real tough for me. I really could go either way here. I ended up settling on Detroit, and the difference maker is just I think it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson, man. I keep going back to that. I think he's a game wrecker. I think he's better than he gets credit for nationally. And, I would feel better about this if one of the receivers in Baltimore's lineup has really taken that step. I know Zay Flowers has shown promise, but there isn't a second guy. Rashad Bateman at this point. I don't have a whole lot of faith in him. And Odell Beckham showed some life last week, but can you really count on him? It's not proven. This Detroit Lions defense kind of has proven itself to me. And so Mark Andrews he's been productive, but maybe not as productive as you might have hoped. So that's kind of where I settled here because I know Baltimore's defense is very good. They can match up well against Detroit's offense, but that's kind of where I settled. I think Detroit's defense just kind of has the advantage right now of Baltimore's offense, but I think it's going to be a really close game, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch too.
Yeah, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I hate to say it, but I didn't really go back and forth that hard. I just think this would be the team that can stop the whole Lamar running that I think is going to be the ultimate downfall, kind of what the Ravens have going on right now. This defense played great football, I think, all season. I mean, it has some highs and some lows, but for the most part, this defense is, I think, overperforming. But I just think Lamar's not going to be able to maybe do what he wants to do with the whole run when nothing's there kind of situations that he's been doing. So I just think the running game hadn't been that great to this be one of the games where Dan Campbell, we know what he wants to do. I understand that Montgomery's hurt, but at the end of the day, I think this Detroit team's going to keep their identity and just run the ball, play hard physical football, and I think that's just something that the Ravens are – I think the defense is ready for it, but I just don't think the offense is going to be able to keep up with Detroit if they are just going down and scoring over and over. I just don't see it happening for Baltimore.
Okay. Interesting take. Obviously, we've praised both of these defenses. I think they're both very good. And I wouldn't expect a lot of points, but it'll be something to keep an eye on because both the offenses have potential to put up a big amount of points against anybody. But when you're facing defenses this good, it's hard to imagine. So we'll move it on. We've got another AFC North matchup as we get into the late window of games. The Pittsburgh Steelers coming off a bye, a 3-2 record, traveling to the LA Rams, who are 3-3 on the year. Another one I kind of went back and forth on. I love the Rams' explosion on offense and the firepower there that they showcased last week. And Pittsburgh Steelers offense is one of the most dreadful to watch, but they keep winning games because how good TJ Watt and company is on defense. And it's hard to ever bet against that and the coaching of Mike Tomlin. That said, I did end up going with the Rams because I think they're good enough and creative enough in the red zone to push across a couple touchdowns and get north of 20 points. And I think whenever you do that against Pittsburgh, you're setting yourself up for a lot of wins because Kenny Pickett and company are having a lot of trouble putting points on the board.
Okay. Although it pains me, I went with Pittsburgh here. And it's just, I think the main takeaway for me is LA's offensive line. I think they're going to struggle keeping Matt Stafford upright, and they don't have Kyron Williams in this game, who's been incredibly productive for them so far this year. And their defense is just not very good. So I think even a pedestrian at best offense that Pittsburgh has can at least score some points. And obviously the defense is very good. So going with Pittsburgh.
I agree with kind of what you're saying with the Pittsburgh, but I just think the Rams, the wide receivers they're not going to be able to keep up. I think even if they do score, I think honestly at this point of the season, I'm kind of leaning towards somebody can score 21 points. They're more than likely going to beat Pittsburgh. And I think the Rams can easily score 21 points with the weapons they have. And I just think their defense isn't playing like great by any means, but the Rams defense is playing good enough to where they're not just getting blown out or letting teams easily go down. And Aaron Donald, I think this would be a game that he can make some noise and get to Kenny Pickett a lot. There's been teams with not even nowhere close to a pass rusher like Aaron Donald, and they're getting home to Kenny Pickett. So I think it's the Rams. I just think there's too many weapons on their offense.
Yep, going to be a good one to watch for sure. As we move on, we get to an NFC West matchup. We got the 1-5 Arizona Cardinals, who in some news today, I don't know if y'all saw, did activate Kyler Murray from the injured list. Yep. Obviously, he's probably not going to be playing in this one. I don't know what the timetable return for him, if he returns at all this year. But something to keep an eye on. I know my Ravens played the Cardinals not this Sunday, but the next. So interesting to watch that storyline moving forward. A road matchup to Seattle is always tough, especially the Seahawks team coming off a loss to the Bengals. I've got Seattle bouncing back at home big time here. Give me Geno Smith and company by more than a few touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm going Seattle as well. Geno looked rough last week. I think this is a good chance for him to get back on the horse and play some good football. So I'm going to go with Seattle.
My big thing is kind of what I preached last week. It's just without James Conner, this Arizona team's just not the same. So I just think it's very much Seattle. I think the defense for Arizona's just been a bend and don't break. But I think this is going to be kind of a game that I think they're going to probably break down with just the weapons that they have for Seattle and Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, that people kind of, I don't know, they maybe put a little bit more respect on his name because he's still, I don't know how, but that's Mr. Consistent right there.
Hey, amen to that. He has been a great football player ever since he entered this league, so I'd love to give him his praise when we can. We're going to move it on, finally getting to some AFC West teams here, Christian. The first one's going to be the Green Bay Packers traveling to the AFC West Denver Broncos. Denver 1-5, Green Bay 2-3. I'll let you touch on what you see from the Broncos this year, and if you're brave enough to pull Russell Wilson getting a win at home.
For the Denver side of things, I just think, this maybe is looking worse than what last year was. The defense was at least good last year. I think they're 32nd in a lot of stats. I understand the Miami game kind of does hurt them, but at the end of the day, that defense was, praised to be one of the top 5, arguably some people said top 10, but just the defense doesn't look the same. And then what we seen last week, just Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, what's going on there and how that's going to be good for the team or what's going forward with that duo. And just, Sutton and just even Judy, just the wide receivers of Denver just hadn't been, good for the last couple of seasons. They're not living up to their hype. And I think Jameson Williams, I think will be back in this game, but I think how much snap count will he get? I just don't see Denver honestly beating this Green Bay team. Just for me, I'm going Green Bay just because I think Jordan Love and the young talent they do have in the receiving core is going to be, just good enough to beat this Denver team. Because I think they got rid of all their pass rushers too a couple weeks ago. So Denver's defense just there really isn't much there besides maybe you can say the corner and safety that they have that are great players, but that's really two guys, and the rest are just, I mean, I ain't gonna say nobody's because they're in the NFL, but they're just aren't good enough players to really just pull this defense to get wins like we see these great defenses do.
Yeah, that's a good point, Christian. I am going to go Green Bay here, and I think it's for a lot of the reasons you talked about here. I just think that Denver is tearing it down. They know what they have there, and they just know it's probably not going to work out. So, Green Bay here, Jordan Love and company, maybe getting some rhythm and some chemistry brewing in this football game.
Yeah, there's not a lot that you've seen from Denver that can even give you any type of confidence to pick them in that defense to do anything. I'm going to go with Green Bay on the road as well. Give me Preston Smith or some type of pass rusher from Green Bay to have a big day against this Denver O-line and come out with the road victory. So that leaves just a couple more games to get to. The last 425 before we get to our primetime games features Christian's Chargers going on the road to take on the rival Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. We previewed a little bit of this before the Monday night game last week and how big of a divisional game this would be. Now that the Chargers have dropped the Monday night game to Dallas, even more pivotal to avoid a 2-4 start for the Chargers. I'm going to let Christian touch on what he needs to see from his Chargers in this game and who he's ultimately going to pick.
Yeah, I just think we need to see a true number 2 wide receiver show themselves during definitely this game, or maybe we see Everett, the tight end, kind of get back to what he was last year, as he has not shown that much promise either. So I just think maybe Austin Eckler, another week of maybe you can say rest, but another week to actually heal up. Then on the Chiefs side, I will say they traded for Mecole Hardman, a guy they had last season. They traded him to come back to KC. I don't expect him to really play this game. They're just a quick turnaround, but he maybe can get some play. But I think looking forward, that's a player maybe to look out for on KC because that's actually a wide receiver that's had show promise in this offense. So I just think for the Chargers, though, to win this game, it's really Derwin James is going to have to stick probably Travis Kelce the whole game. And ultimately, the pass rush that's kind of been created is going to have to get to Patrick Mahomes now in this game. So I just think really for the Chargers to win, it's going to come down to, one, the coaching has not been that great. I mean, and just defense has to maybe live up to what they were supposed to be and what we've seen last playoffs when we were there. Just it has not been. So, I mean, I'm going to go with the Chargers just because, like Chase said, it's a 2-4 start. Don't need it to happen. The coaching, I think, they kind of know they're on the hot seat now, I feel like. And just Justin Herbert, I feel like, it's going to have to carry the team, and he knows that now. And I think Keenan Allen, and it's a division rival. We know how close these games are. So I just see the Chargers pulling this one out and maybe stealing the one early and maybe losing that second one that we play against them later, to just how big of a game this is during the season.
Yeah, might surprise some people here, but I am going to go with the Chargers in this game. The reason why I'm going with the Chargers is just because I think they're due, man. Kansas City's been playing down to their opponents every week. You know, they beat the Jets by 3 a couple weeks ago, the Vikings by 7, and then they only dropped 19 on the Broncos last week, only won by 11. So, you know, the Chiefs, they normally start slow in the year. I think they're due for an L. I really do. So I think interdivisional game, the Chargers have played the Chiefs well normally. And so I'm going to pick them to get the upset here. I think Justin Herbert is going to play a great game and really put some people on notice that I've heard a lot of murmurs talking about Justin Herbert isn't great. He's, you know, he don't got the dog in him. I still think Justin Herbert's a good quarterback. And as a Dolphins fan, our fan base drills Justin Herbert for whatever reason, and I'm not that guy. I believe in Justin Herbert. I think the Chargers can pull up a upset in this game.
Wow. So truthfully, before you pick Brian, I had the Chargers. I'm not going to lie to you because I think it's a more pivotal game, as Christian touched on. A 2-4 start would be dreadful for them, like absolutely dreadful with this roster and Herbert manning this offensive unit. That said, I need to gain a gain somewhere because y'all are ahead of me. Or Brian's ahead of me. I'm tied with Christian. So I'm going to flip over. I'm going to go to the Chiefs. And like I said, I think the Chargers are a better team and everything, or not a better team, but need the game more at least. And the Chiefs have been playing down their competition, as you said. But in order to gain a gain here and the extra day's rest that the Chiefs got could play into this maybe. I'm going to bet with Patrick Mahomes and see if they can pull out a home victory in a divisional game. So we'll move it on to our primetime games, get these last two in before we get our takes of the week going. The first one is the Sunday night game between the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got Miami traveling 5-1 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, my cousin is blowing up my phone. And I'm trying to talk while I'm doing this. I'm gonna take Miami. I'm not gonna go a whole bunch into it. I think these are two great teams, but give me Miami's offense. They've looked like the best unit out of all four of these on each side of the ball. So go ahead, Brian, dive into them.
All right, so this matchup is compelling for a lot of reasons. I think Miami obviously has been to a great start this year, and I am going to pick Miami, but I picked Miami every week this year. And I was more confident in our ability to beat the Bills than I am in our ability to beat Philadelphia. And a large part of that is I think our offensive line is improved. I don't think our offensive line is great by no means. I think a large part of our offensive line looking as good as it has been Tua. I think he gets the ball out of his hands extremely fast. I think he avoids sacks. He throws the ball away. He's been protecting himself. But also he's very good at manipulating the pocket, stepping up into the pocket, and keeping his offensive linemen in good position to stay on their blocks. So that's been a huge thing. Tua has always been good at it, but I think he's taken another step this year. And I think that combined with getting the ball in his hands quick has helped this offensive line quite a bit. And they're not going against any front. They're going against the Eagles. And this is going to challenge them greatly in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Because Miami likes to run light box count and Philly likes to run the ball. And so I think this is a matchup that we don't match up quite as well. But I'm still going to pick Miami. I think Darius Slay being a little banged up. James Bradbury is still healthy, but these guys are good corners, but they're a little long in the tooth. I think they might have a little bit of an issue keeping up with the speed we have. So I think you can kind of look at this either way, but I'm still going to pick Miami. I think the difference maker in this football game will have to be Tua Tagovailoa, because it's not the first read's not going to be there. You're going to have to hit the second, third, or you're going to have to make some guys miss within the pocket and extend plays. So I'm going to pick Miami here, and if Miami is to win, expect a big game from Tua.
I did kind of go back and forth for real on this game. It was a tough one, but this was, I had to pick an upset somewhere, but I wouldn't call it an upset. I just think we seen the Dolphins play the Chargers, and that was when our defense wasn't that great. And I think their defense is definitely better than ours is at this point of the season. But this is another team that can also run the ball and pass the ball great, like the Chargers did against y'all in that first week. So I just think this can be a game that y'all maybe drop just because this is more of a complete team. Y'all hadn't really played many teams like this that can actually do both and be successful at both. And I just think the Eagles, after what happened last week, I think this defense is going to come out tough, mean, hear the noise that y'all are getting and how much hype y'all are getting. And I think this would be kind of like a statement game for them to kind of shut everybody up about them not being as great as they were last year. This would be the game they kind of take away to put at least themselves back on the map.
Yep. Yeah, I think game of the week for my money. It's going to be a fun one to watch. We will record as early as we can Sunday so Brian can get straight into that and watch his Dolphins travel and play those tough defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. So the last one we're going to get to here is the Monday night matchup between the 5-1 49ers and the 2-4 Minnesota Vikings. Don't have a lot to say about this one. I think the 49ers got hoed by some officiating last week, and they're still a great team. They're going to be without McCaffrey, who has an oblique problem right now, and Debo is nursing an injury as well. That said, they're still plenty good enough to beat this Vikings team, in my opinion. Give me the Niners on the road in prime time.
Yeah, I think this one can get pretty ugly quickly without Justin Jefferson. I think the 49ers defense will dominate this game. I don't even know if they have to play offense. I'm going to go with San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely just keep it short. I just think Brandon Ayuk, I think the Vikings are going to be sending the heat. So I think Brandon Ayuk could probably have a big day with Brock Purdy and his connection with them him and George Kittle are kind of like the only two, I guess you could say, stars left on the offense. So with those two guys, I think it's either going to be Brandon Ayuk or George Kittle that can really just single-handedly beat this Vikings team if they get too aggressive.
I like it. I like it. Some great games on tap this week for NFL Week 7. Great to have our picks in here. We're going to move it on to our takes of the week, and we're going to take one from our own football team as well as one across the NFL landscape and try to get out of this pod at a relatively short amount of time. The first one is going to be from my Ravens. I came up with a few different things in my head since our last time talking. And seeing Miami's dominant on offense ever since they acquired Tyreek Hill got me thinking about a few things and how a great offensive mind, a great schemer, partnered with a great playmaker at one position like a Tyreek Hill can really break some games. So I really think highly. Y'all have heard me of Mike Macdonald, our defensive coordinator. We are currently tied for the league in sacks. And we don't have a dominant pass rusher by any means. Justin Madubuike is the leading sack guy on the team with 4.5, and he's an interior defensive lineman. He is scheming up stuff very well for these defenders. And now it's NFL trade season. We haven't even touched. Mecole Hardman was traded back to the Chiefs today. These type of things are moving back and forth, and it's the next coming weeks until the deadline. We're going to see a lot of names floated around. I've seen Danielle Hunter from Minnesota floated around. Chase Young of the Washington Commanders has been floated around. And all of those guys always seem to be linked with the Ravens every time I see a name. So thinking of an elite pass rusher, if it were to become available, and partner that with a great defensive mind like Mike Macdonald and the possibilities that presents, do you guys have a preference on either of those two I just listed, or is there another guy whose name's out there that you may could see being a fit for this Ravens team and break open this pass rush who's already been really, really good?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that, and I think y'all run 3-4 base, right? I'm pretty sure. Baltimore runs a 3-4 base defense. And you mentioned Chase Young and Danielle Hunter, right? Both of those guys are 4-3 stand up defensive end types. So I don't necessarily know if they're 1-for-1 scheme fit, but I do think adding an elite pass rusher to this team, like one name that comes to mind for me is maybe near the trade deadline, New England realizes kind of where they are, understanding that they're not a playoff team. Maybe I'll inquire about Matthew Judon because I know he's an excellent fit for that defense. Obviously, he came from you guys, homegrown talent.
Well,
But
he not to cut you off, Brian, but I believe he's out for the year. I'm not sure this is
Judon
fair.
is out there. You're
Yeah,
right. You're right.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but I do remember him being hurt. I didn't know the length, but I want to say it's for the season. I want to say
I think it was a bicep tendon or something regarding
trust
that.
me, that would be mouthwatering. Obviously, I love the guy came from us, but yeah, there's not many names out there. But if you have another or anyone that you think, feel free.
No, not one that comes to the top of my mind, but yeah, I definitely like the idea. Just bringing an explosive playmaker to add to the scheme that's clearly working as well as it is. But yeah.
Well, just to go real quick, a guy that kind of I thought of, but I just think there's really not a shot, is Frank Clark. I mean, he went to visit with KC today, got released by the Denver Broncos, but I just ultimately see him end up back in KC. But I think that'd be a good guy that y'all can maybe add for maybe a cheaper little deal, just because, I mean, he's kind of looking for a home, but I think KC ultimately land him. But I would like to see maybe a Chase Young come to y'all just because, like you're saying, the defense is getting creative. He can maybe do something with Chase Young, move him to possibly the middle, just kind of cause chaos, or move him anywhere really on the line just to see. I mean, this is what your defense is doing without a pass rusher. So imagine if y'all do actually get a actual pass rusher. I can see why you're bringing that up and stuff. I think that's kind of is maybe one thing this team's missing till we've seen Clowney have moments this year, but nothing crazy.
What about Chandler Jones?
No.
I'm good. Appreciate the offer. Yeah, I like those answers, guys. I mean, NFL trade season always gets stuff floating around, and I love having these names discussed. So I'll let each of you take it for your team takes of the week.
Okay. So mine is a hot topic item across Dolphins Twitter. Who is more important to Miami's offense, Tua or Tyreek Hill?
Go ahead, Chase.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you said more important, Tyreek Hill or who? Tua?
Tua and Miami's offense.
Jesus, man.
It's my Lord and Savior.
Default to quarterback. truthfully, I'm going to default. I mean, obviously, I think Tyreek Hill is the better player at the position. I think he's one of probably the top 5 players in football right now. Like, he's doing everything he said he would do preseason. He's on track for a 2,000-yard season. He's that good.
Plus,
But that said, you have who's y'all's backup this year? I don't even know.
Mike White.
Mike
Mike White.
He threw a pick 6 last week, right? Like, yeah, have him come in and try to force feed Tyreek Hill. I don't think there's a doubt that you can get schemed open still. Like, that'll happen, but he don't have the anticipation and the accuracy that Tua does. And although he may hit on some of the throws, he's not going to be as consistent as Tua. I think Tua's the vitalist for this offense going forward, and his health is paramount for this Dolphins team, and they've done a great job so far. So credit to them. As good as Tyreek Hill is, I can never steer away from saying a good quarterback is less valuable than any playmaker, really, no matter who it may be.
My only argument is, I mean, if we're looking at the team as a whole, and without one of those players there, I mean, I can kind of still argue, I think Tyreek Hill, just because I will feel like your offense is so talented and what we've seen out of the run game, y'all would still be able to maybe win games, maybe not as big as y'all are right now, but kind of like ultimately, I agree with what Chase saying is it probably is Tua, but my only thing that kind of scares me away from picking maybe Tua over Tyreek Hill is I know I'm going to get Tyreek Hill for a full season. Tua has yet to prove that to me. That's my only kind of like argument on why I guess you would go Tyreek Hill over that. But really, your quarterbacks, that's your guy. That's who's going to win and lose you games. We kind of seen that with Buffalo this year, just off the top of my head. I mean, we even say the Jets, Zach Wilson. Just when you don't have a quarterback that at least can do a little something or even be as good as what we've seen that to this point, just I think it's a whole game changer. Makes your defense have to be out there longer to then this Dolphins team probably won't even look the same in reality once you do kind of unplug a Tua from the team.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I think it is Tua, and I think it's a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. I think a big part of it is this offense is tailored to him, and it brings out the best in what he can do well. And not many other quarterbacks have the same strengths that Tua has. He's kind of a unique player in that regard because he's definitely not the stereotype quarterback you want. If you're building one from scratch, if you know what I mean, like a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, but he does a lot of things really well. And I think it's just hard to stop once you provide him with the right skill set players like Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill, I agree with you, Chase. I think he's top 3 at his position. I don't know if I can say the same for Tua, but Tua is the straw that stirs the drink for Miami's offense. But that was my take for my team.
All right, wouldn't be a Chargers take if I didn't bring this up. So, I'm going to just name the rest of the schedule real quick. Just say the teams we're playing. So you have Bears, Jets, Lions, Packers, Ravens, Patriots, Broncos, Raiders, Bills, Broncos, Chiefs. So with that being said, I mean, we're already at, 2-4? So do you ultimately at the end of this season think we'll still have our head coach or will he be gone? Just looking at the schedule and seeing what our team looking like right now, I mean, is this the year that, the talk happens again? The Chargers, we have the talent, we have the players, just the coaching is not there. And this is ultimately the year that we see a whole new coaching staff again. Other than maybe Kellen Moore, I would think be the only coach that gets to stay that could honestly maybe get the head coaching job just because he's there. And you're going to hire a head coach that has to deal with Kellen Moore no matter what. I feel like it'll be a harder job to kind of get in there. So do you just see, I think the question is just after this year, is there a new head coach you think heading into LA?
I think that the smart move would be to fire Brandon Staley and promote Kellen Moore to the head coaching position. At least, interview though, look around, see what is out there. But if Brandon Staley is the head coach next year, I'm sure that wouldn't make you very happy, Christian. I'm sure a lot of Chargers fans probably feel that way. I think he is the primary piece that's holding y'all back. So, although I would say his track record hasn't been great, he still has the job. So if you guys catch fire, which I definitely think y'all are capable of doing, you make the playoffs, I think he could still be the coach next year.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to the schedule you reeled off, I think the Chargers will actually be favored in a lot of those games. Maybe outside of Detroit and Buffalo, the Ravens could be a toss-up as well. Looking at everyone else, the Chiefs will be probably KC favored. But, I mean, Bears, Jets, Packers, Pats, Broncos, Raiders, Broncos. That's a lot of games. And that's 7 right there. So even if you start 2-4, you just take care and beat those teams that you're supposed to beat. That gets the 9 wins right there. And if you split with KC, if you beat a Detroit or you beat a Baltimore, that's good enough to sneak you in the playoffs at 10, 11 wins, I think. And ultimately, I think it's hard. A 2-4 start would be tough. That's why this week's game is so pivotal for y'all. But with Herbert, I think y'all can still sneak in, and a sneak in regardless will keep the coach around unless the playoff performance is that like a repeat of last year. Not to bring up any bad memories there, Christian, but it would have to be a debacle because you're going to face a really good team, and there'll be an excuse like if you drop say a first round matchup to a Miami, to a KC, whatever like the 2 seed or 3 seed may be in the AFC, it's going to be a really good football team, a team that you wouldn't be favored against. So if they make it in the playoffs and keep it competitive and show they have the potential with a few tweaks to personnel on the defense, I think that's enough to keep them around. The only thing that I see him getting canned is if they miss the playoffs. I think it's a lock. He's gone no matter what. Or if they get to the playoffs and he makes just one of his typical bad calls, aggressive calls that don't pan out, or they blow a lead like whatever happened last year. So interesting to watch your team the rest of the year and keep an eye on that because it's one of the hotter NFL coaching seats. And if it were to become an open job available, I think a lot of coaches around the league would be very interested in working with Justin Herbert for their career. So, yeah, that's our team takes of the week. So that just leaves a few minutes. We're already at 47. We'll try to get some quick ones in on our NFL landscape takes of the week. I'm trying. Do y'all already have one in mind? Because I'm going back and forth.
Yeah, I got one. But Brian, you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I had 2, but I'll go with this one. What if Sean Payton took the Broncos job knowing he was going to tank so he can get Caleb Williams?
You got your tinfoil hat on? Is that what the
Yep, it's on right now.
Question is? Well,
it's on right now. No, well, that's not the spirit of the take. If the Broncos really, they look like they're tearing it down. They want to focus on their young players, develop, and everything like that. Well, Russell Wilson is getting old, guys. And his style of play does not necessarily translate to being a mid to upper 30s quarterback and still having the same level of success he did earlier in his career. And I just don't see it working out for him and Sean Payton. So that's probably going to be an ugly divorce this year. And because they're tearing it down that way they are, I have a hard time seeing them winning too many games, especially they get to the trade deadline and somehow trade Russell Wilson. I doubt that happens, but something crazy. I definitely think they're going to shut down Russell Wilson at some point this season, and they're going to move on next year and potentially have the number 1 pick in the draft. If they get the number 1 pick in the draft, they would be ridiculous not to pick Caleb Williams, in my mind at least. And so, that being said, will Sean Payton keep his job, and how nervous does that make you, Christian, having Sean Payton and Caleb Williams?
Okay, so since you pointed it towards me, this is my kind of quick argument against that. Is just so right now with the top 6 picks, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at Chicago and the Panthers. So Chicago have both of those picks. You have Arizona, the Giants, and New England. So other than Carolina, all these teams have at least 1 win. So I just ultimately see Denver at least getting more wins than teams like an Arizona. I mean, possibly we can really say New England just because how that division looks. I mean, if anybody was going to tank and get this thing that Bill's on the hot seat, it'd be, I think, New England. Go ahead, tank it, get Caleb Williams, hope he can do it for you. But I just, at the end of the day, really think Chicago, with the Justin Fields news too, I think Chicago, either way, with the Panthers or their pick, is going to lock in that number 1 pick. And I just think Denver, my only argument too with them selecting a quarterback is you still tied up to Russell Wilson for another year.
They got.
I mean, I guess you could get a rookie quarterback and sit him on the bench, but you tied yourself to Russell Wilson and this coach.
I think
your big thing was this will be a duo. We want both of these guys. And that's what Denver really wanted, and they kind of got it. And I just think, I mean, another team I can say is Tennessee. We hadn't talked about Ryan Tannehill's injury. That's another team that can sneak up and get a lot more losses than we predicted. And I think Minnesota, I think without Jefferson, what's their season going to look like? So I just think this number one pick or tank race is going to be, I mean, right there, I named 8 teams. I think there's a lot more bad teams than people are really realizing right now in the season.
Yep. As we get towards the end of the year, we want to see what teams are in that race for Caleb Williams, and it's gonna become very evident of which ones are serious about trying to lose football games. I mean, no, the players never try to lose games. Let's get that out of the way. It's front offices, it's coaching staffs who sit guys out and whatnot. We come up with these injuries that put the team in a position to lose. So there'll be a handful of teams to watch out for. I will say I don't think Denver's terrible. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they'll be one of them. I really think the Arizona Cardinals have the inside track. Unless Kyler Murray plays any games this year, them without James Conner is a very bad football team. But, I mean, I think they deserve it because they're playing hard for their coach. And a generational talent in Arizona seems to be, needed. They haven't had much outside of the Kyler Murray playoff run in a while. So I would not be upset to see that. Denver's going to be stuck with Russell, which I think they're just going to cut ties at season's end anyway, whether trade or cut, actually releasing him and let him move on to try to work his way around the NFL and prove he deserves a starting job, and just stick with Sean Payton because they're tied up in money with him. Don't really see it panning out because Chiefs Chargers are in that division and they're going to be good for a while with their quarterbacks. So not a great ground to be in for Denver, but maybe it's a good thing because Caleb Williams saying he's wanting majority stake into ownership if whoever drafts him. So maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. He's really playing. He knows he's really good. He's playing his hand well. I give him that. So an interesting story to watch in the college football landscape. So I like the question, Brian. We'll move it on. I think I've got mine for this week. Went back and forth on a few options here, but ultimately I landed on the NFC playoff picture. And I know it's early and there's a few teams that we've talked on in abundance on this podcast. But the AFC is a lot more loaded. We've all admitted that coming into the year. And the division winners and the division leaders in the NFC seem to separate themselves pretty early. And I think by season's end, that'll be the case. But what team do you have sneaking into the final wild card? Are you standing by your predictions that you made earlier in the year? I believe, Brian, you said the Saints were the last wild card team in the NFC. I know you had the Falcons winning it. We may have to go back and relook at the podcast and the standings we had. But any feelings changed about what NFC wildcard team can sneak in the last spot? I can't even remember who I had. I know I had the Saints winning division. I think I had Minnesota, which is, God, that's looking awful. But I don't know. I'm trying to land on a team, and I think Brian's talked me into Atlanta sneaking their way and being the one team to change my original predictions and make their way into the playoffs. Any of you guys have any thoughts on these bubble playoff fringe teams in the NFC?
So far, my predictions, I think, look pretty darn good because I think I had San Francisco coming out the West. I had Atlanta winning the South. I had Detroit winning the North. And I had, I think, Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, or Minnesota, Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago, Minnesota. One of those. And then Philly won the East, yes, yeah. But Seattle, New Orleans, and I think I picked Dallas. I still pretty much stand by the teams I had.
I will say, I think we all pretty much had the same 6. I want to say we all had Philly, Detroit, Dallas, San Fran, the NFC South winner, which Brian had the Falcons, I had the Saints, and then who am I missing here? Got the North, South, the West. So yeah, and Seattle. Did I say Seattle? So those 6, and yeah, I'm sorry, we're losing track here, but we had those 6 in the final. What I'm saying is the final NFC spot could be any team. It really could.
Yeah,
it could be the Washington Commanders. It could be the Atlanta Falcons, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It could be any of these Green Bay Packers if they turn things around. Like,
I,
it's so up in the air, and I truly don't know. And maybe even a better question is, which of those bubble teams do you have the most faith in? Do you think could show something and even put together a somewhat winning football season?
I think it's going to be a team out of the NFC South that sneaks in. I think between Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa, one of those teams is obviously going to win the division and go, but one of those other teams is going to be a wild card team, and I think it's just going to be one of them. I think it's
Yeah.
probably either going to be New Orleans or Tampa Bay. I'm still high on Atlanta, dude. I think as soon as they make the quarterback switch to Taylor Heineke, the offense is going to look a little bit better. So
Yeah.
I really do believe in Atlanta's team, bro. I think they got pieces on defense, and their offense is loaded except for that position at quarterback. So,
I like it.
that's where I'm standing with that.
Mine is definitely NFC South. Tampa Bay's a leading team, and then a team that I've kind of been, the last 2 weeks beating the drum on, and I think it's the Rams. I think the
Love
Rams
it.
could easily sneak some wins. The weapons they have on offense, the defense start playing better later in the season, and I mean, I just think that's a team that can sneak in. We're talking about good teams. This team, I think, is a great team. I think the defense is their only weakness, but offensively. Their running back did get shaken up a little bit, but I mean, they're bringing guys that already know the system, a bunch of guys from the practice squad that's been a part of the team already. But I think the Rams just physically, Cooper Kupp's back. Puka Nakua has been great. Just head coaching's great. This is a team that I think is coached so well that he could sneak his way into a wild card spot, that very last one. And then, honestly, I think they could make some noise in the playoffs. I don't think I'm throwing that far, but they can make some noise in the first round and then maybe have a round 2 bounce out. But right now, I'd definitely say the Rams. But, I mean, I would just say I feel like Tampa Bay is probably over them right now just because how bad the South is, and they could probably win some more games than the Rams can in that tough division.
I'm right there with you, Christian. I think as we see this playoff picture unfold, it's still obviously not even halfway through the year, so a lot of things can change here. But the consensus is outside of our 6 teams we all believe in the NFC South team number 2, and the LA Rams, who none of us or all of us really said was the mystery team, but we didn't have expectations for. So it's going to be a battle between those two, I think, for the final wild card spot, and it'll be a fun race to watch. So, Christian, I'll let you get your take of the week, and we will get out of here.
All right, this one would be probably, I think short. It won't be that bad, but with the Giants and what I kind of seen against the Bills, I think, you can say what you want with this take, but I think Tyrod Taylor is the better move going forward. I think already. I think you look at their schedule. I think this week, yes, it will be him. But then if Daniel Jones come back, you're looking at the Jets, the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Patriots, Packers, Saints, Eagles, Rams, Eagles. So if Daniel Jones does come back, if he comes back next week against the Jets, I think after seeing what Tyrod Taylor's kind of done, people are going to be calling for him. And then if he don't get pulled, then you're going to the Raiders, and then Max Crosby's going to have a field day with the Giants offensive line. And then if it don't happen, then he's got to go play the Cowboys against that whole defense. So I just think Daniel Jones' future, just with the scheduling, doesn't look too promising. And I just think with a veteran like Tyrod Taylor, with kind of a Buffalo defense that we've seen some very high play out of and make quarterbacks kind of look bad, that just he played a great game. Had 200 passing yards, did make some mental mistakes, but when was the last time Tyrod Taylor was on a football field?
Yeah, I see your argument there, Christian, but I'm going to lean it back as I'm not going to overrate or beat on Daniel Jones too much. I don't think he's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He got overpaid, all the narrative around that, all these things. But I think Tyrod Taylor's performance had just as much to do with Saquon being back more than anything. Daniel Jones did get this team to the playoffs when Saquon was fully healthy last year and the defense played good. That was the recipe, and that was trying to be the recipe coming into this year, but the offensive line has been so bad. He has no weapons and he has no time. I can't fault a guy that much for what he's working with. By no means, so I think he's this great quarterback, but I'm not ready to say Tyrod Taylor, a true veteran quarterback. He was the backup on our Super Bowl team. He has been in the league a while now, and we know what Tyrod Taylor is. I'm not saying he's a bad football player, but he's the prototypical NFL backup. I think Daniel Jones is not much better. He is better than the prototypical NFL backup. And if you paired him with Saquon and a better line, he'd be doing better. and especially if he had some guys to throw to as well. So that's where I stand on that.
I think I agree with Christian. For this Giants team, where this offensive line is and where this receiving corpse is, I think Tyrod Taylor can be better in this team, this iteration of the Giants. If you give better protection to Daniel Jones, allow him to process, 'cause I think that's really where his shortcomings are as a quarterback. I think he has athleticism in plenty. The guy can run like no other. He's got a cannon for an arm. He struggles with accuracy, but the main thing for him is mental processing, reading the defense, understanding where your hots are, coordinating protection. All of those things, Tyrod Taylor does a better job at. And he has been. He's an NFL vet. He's been doing this for a while. He's been around the block. So he's very aware of his limitations and what he can and cannot do. I cannot say the same for Daniel Jones. I think in a better situation, Daniel Jones is better. But for this iteration of New York Giants, I would lean Tyrod Taylor.
No, I agree with what Brian said. I just think with what the Giants is at right now, and I mean, honestly, I could argue that he could be a starter on some other teams, but we won't go down that road because it's been a longer pod. But I mean, I give Tyrod Taylor some credit. I mean, they went against a Buffalo team that a lot of people, I mean, even we did on this pod, wrote them off, and Tyrod Taylor played a good enough game. I understand Barkley did have a great game too, but I think Tyrod Taylor kind of did keep them in that game. Just easily could have got a halftime score and then a penalty called at the end of the game. We're talking Tyrod Taylor probably totally different in this spot than how we're talking about him right now.
That is true. That is true, Christian. I think that was a fair question, a great question for this pod. And a lowly Giants team, no matter who's playing quarterback, we all expected the regression to come, but this is one of the worst football teams in the NFL. Only one win to show for it, and that's telling of what their football season has been. So disappointment for New York Giants fans everywhere. We'll end it on that note unless you guys have anything else. It was a fun preview. I think we have each of our team is in a headlining matchup this NFL Week 7, so we have a lot of good football to watch Sunday, and we will be ready to recap it all hopefully early as we can so we get Brian to watch that Sunday night football game. That should be amazing, and have that pod ready for you. This one will be up in your feeds tomorrow morning, and as always, we thank you all for listening. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. All the stuff we put out on our content pages. And until next time, we will see you Sunday night for the NFL Week 7 recap. Be safe. Peace out, guys.
Peace.
Go Eagles.